Happy week 3. This is the No Glitz, No Glamour daily video from Bankster DFS, where we're going to take a look at some Prize Picks DFS plays with our partner PrizePicks.com. Promo code Bankster to get a 100% first time deposit bonus up to $100. We're going to get some plays for both tonight's Thursday night game, if you're watching this on Thursday, and the Sunday games, in case you're watching this on the weekend. We want to make sure you benefit from this information as well. You can also benefit from a lot of information over at BanksterDFS.com, where we cover all the major sports, not just NFL. Major sports, niche sports, college sports. NBA season tips off in about a week and a half. NHL in about 2.5 weeks. Soccer season's in full swing. MMA, NASCAR is going to come back soon. We've got the college sports, lots of college sports slates. PGA, pretty much everything. We cover it. And in our Slack chat, we do have bonus channels for things like sports betting, professional wrestling, sports cards, our training wing, Bankster University. And we have a page dedicated to our Prize Picks DFS plays, where we're always updating plays that we like for not just football, but all the sports that we do cover. Every day with Bankster DFS, you do get daily player pools for all the sports that we cover, a Slack chat, as we talked about, and award-winning articles and analysis from FSWA award winners like myself and Jeff Kaminsky, and Team Bankster, who are a bunch of future FSWA award winners, in my humble opinion. All that comes in for under $4 a week. $3.99 a week gets you access to everything that we do, and you can lower that effective cost with monthly and yearly options. And please remember, when you sign up with us, as long as you don't cancel, your price will never increase no matter what our price goes up to for new members. Everything, all sports, all content, no hidden fees. BanksterDFS.com/subscribe. If you have any questions, hit me up on Twitter at Bankster17. For more NFL content, please make sure you check out NFL Live Before Lock, 10:30 a.m., streaming live on Twitter and our YouTube page with myself, Doug Shane, and Michael Gudadero. We will cover your cash games, your GPP plays, inactives. We will make some prize pick plays as well over there. And while you're here, like, share, subscribe, and click that notification icon so you know when new videos go up. We do try to do at least one video a day. Today we were on our second video. Some days we'll have, again, those multiple videos, Bankster University videos, and of course those live streams as well. And drop a comment. Let us know what you're planning on picking for your prize pick plays this week. And let's try to get this video up to 20 likes. The more likes, shares, subscribes, and notifications that you click, the more videos we can do and the more relevant our content can be when you drop those comments and let us know what it is you're looking for. So heading on over to Prize Picks DFS, if you've never played with Prize Picks, essentially what you're doing is you're looking at player props. And as you can see from the top of the screen, there are a lot of player props from many different sports. They just posted NBA futures today as well. But they've got things ranging from baseball, football, college sports, disc golf, truck racing, everything you can think of. They have opportunities to go in there and put together a team. And essentially you are putting together a 2 to 5 player parlay card where you're picking overs and unders on stat categories. And with their flex play option, all you need to get is 3 out of 5 correct for you to pick up a win. The more you get right, the more you win. But at least you get some return even with only 3 out of 5. So that's where it's a little bit better than a parlay card. It is a DFS team, and you just need 3 of your 5 picks to be correct. Let's take a look at some plays that I happen to like this week, and then maybe we'll put together a couple teams. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at just tonight's game, the Thursday game. Then we'll come back and talk about some Sunday plays. Tonight's game, I do think the story that's going to be told and the way that games are going to turn out, and since we don't have to worry about roster percentage, we can not try to be different. You're not going up against anyone. It is you against your own picks, so we don't have to worry about trying to outsmart anyone here. We just look at a category and go, will this player hit that number? And I think the story that's going to be told from this game is the Panthers will play strong defense, get out to a lead, run the ball, not try to push the ball downfield too much, and Houston's going to have to play a little bit of catch-up. I just think that's, with the way that Carolina's defense is playing, that just makes a lot of sense. In that case, I don't think we're going to need to see a ton of passing yards out of Sam Darnold. Could he pass for 300 yards in this game? Yeah, of course he could. I don't think he's going to need to. I would definitely not bet this prop because there's a chance he's thrown for a lot of yards in the first 2 games this year, so I'm not going to take the under necessarily. I'm just going to avoid playing Sam Darnold. Now, I do think Davis Mills is going to have to get out there and throw a ton, and I don't see Houston trying to run the ball too much. Maybe they'll start the game trying to establish the run and slow down the pace of the game. But if Carolina gets up 10-0, 17-0, I do think you're going to see Houston just try to sling it. Davis Mills looked pretty good in preseason. Was only 8 for 18 last week in relief for Tyrod Taylor, but Anthony Miller is back for Houston. They've got 2 running backs at least who can catch the ball. Mark Ingram's an underrated pass catcher. Brandon Cooks is a real high-volume guy. I do think that there is an argument to be made to bet the over on 205.5 or to throw a 205.5 in your lineup. We'll see if we come back to that one, depending upon some of the other plays we see for this game. Rushing for this game, I don't think anyone on Houston is worth looking at for rushing. I don't foresee Sam Darnold running around a lot. And Christian McCaffrey, I do see that perhaps Chuba Hubbard could get some work in this game. McCaffrey normally is a 95% snap guy. He's only seen 80% of the snaps this year, with Chuba Hubbard seeing about 20% of the snaps. Does that mean that McCaffrey's only going to get 40, 50 yards? No, he could very well go over this number. And if I were going to pick McCaffrey, I would pick the over on his rushing yards right here at 84.5. But I think I'm going to pass on this one because if the Panthers get up, this is a great spot to rest them on a short week. 10 days rest, coming off the injury last year. Give Chuba some work and let him get acclimated to the NFL. I wish there was a prop in here for Chuba because I would absolutely throw that in there. And I'm only recording this at noon. There's 8 hours until the game, and Prize Picks does update not just their player pool, but they do update the number. So if this number comes down to maybe 79.5, 76.5, I might consider it. And if we could get a prop on Chuba at 12.5 or 19.5, I'd go all the way up to 19.5. Those are the two numbers I would think that they put up. I would consider Chuba Hubbard. He had 8 carries last week in a blowout win against New Orleans. I think he'd be a guy I'd want to target today. Receiving yards are kind of where my head is at for this game. And there's a few players I'm looking at specifically. First one is Brandon Cooks, 68.5 receiving yards. I think that's a low number for him. He's got a ton of targets so far this year, near double digits in both games. I believe it's 23 targets over 2 games. He is the clear number 1 option. Nico Collins is injured. The tight ends don't run a lot of pass routes. And Brandon Cooks is going to be peppered with volume. 50% of the passes, 9 passes of the 18 that Davis Mills threw last week went to Brandon Cooks. He's just going to see a ton of volume. I'm just going to quickly flip over to the receptions because you can only put a player in once. You can't do both receptions and receiving yards for Cooks. Yeah, we've got Cooks at 5.5 receptions. I do like the secondary a little bit for Carolina. It's possible. See, for me, I'd rather take the yards prop at 68.5. In case, let's say Cooks gets a 35-yard reception, he only needs another 34 yards at that point to hit the number, and he can do that on 4 more catches. So then we're looking at 5 for 70 yards. I think it's more reasonable than looking at him to get those 6 receptions. We've just got to add that volume. He can get this in 1 play. I like where 1 play can turn into getting the over. So I'm going to click on Brandon Cooks, and over on the side of the screen, you'll see he shows up, and I'm just going to click the over on that. Moving on down, Terrace Marshall's a guy that we need to look at. He has 15 targets on this, or 12 targets on the season, sorry. Brandon Zylstra scored the touchdown last week, but Terrace Marshall has as many targets as Robbie Anderson this year. He's been on the field for 52% of the snaps. Again, if Carolina jumps out to a lead in this game, maybe they try to work Marshall a little bit more into the offense. And while I don't think they're going to pass a ton, I do think that getting Marshall on the field, and he is a big play kind of a guy, he's very elusive in the open field. 1 play can get us there, and with the snap counts that we're seeing from Marshall, I do think that 30 yards is not a terribly large number for him for us to attack for him. The other receiving options I'm looking for in this game, first of all, is Dan Arnold. Dan Arnold has seen less snaps than Ian Thomas. Ian Thomas has been on the field for 62% of the snaps. Dan Arnold just 39% of the snaps. Though Arnold has out-targeted Ian Thomas 7-4, and Dan Arnold has been targeted on 95% of the route. Or it's not targeted. Dan Arnold has run a route on 95% of the snaps that he sees, whereas Ian Thomas has only ran a route 58% of the time. When Arnold's on the field, he's out there to try to catch passes. I think he has a much better opportunity of hitting his receiving number than Ian Thomas. And actually, if you look at Sportsbook, his receiving props are 22.5 a lot of places. So we get that extra yard here, which does make a difference. And the Houston Texans have given up a ton of opportunities to tight ends. They gave up at least 3 targets to 3 different Cleveland tight ends last week. And then they gave up 7 targets to James O'Shaughnessy in week 1. James O'Shaughnessy, Dan Arnold, fairly similar games, though I think did I say Darnold? Dan Arnold. Looks like Darnold. Look at that. Dan Arnold is a little more elusive down the seam and a little shiftier than James O'Shaughnessy. And so I do believe Dan Arnold actually has a better opportunity to put up a bigger game than O'Shaughnessy did. And O'Shaughnessy had himself a nice game. So I'm going to go in there and throw the over in on Dan Arnold as well. Anthony Miller is expected to make his return to the lineup this game. They traded for him for a reason. They want to use him out of the slot. Chris Conley is running a ton of snaps for the Texans, especially with Nico Collins going down. He ran 55 snaps last week, which is only one behind Brandon Cooks. I do think Anthony Miller is going to cut into that, especially if Houston ends up going 3 wide. He might not cut into Conley, but he might be complemented with Conley. Danny Amendola is injured. He's not going to play in this game. Miller could get those slot looks, and with a rookie quarterback making his first ever NFL start, he's probably going to look for those short and intermediate routes. Conley's more of a downfield guy. Brandon Cooks will run all over the field, but Anthony Miller, even if he has 5 receptions and he has a low ADOT, he can turn those 5 receptions pretty easily into 25 yards. Even only 25 yards maybe, but I do think he's going to see a lot of opportunities, and so I do like the over on Anthony Miller on a team that I do expect to have to throw. Let's move back up to the top here. Looking at the receptions prop, Brandon Cooks, again, I didn't love the over 5.5. DJ Moore seeing a ton of targets, but again, I just don't see Carolina having to throw a ton in this game. Terrace Marshall to get those 3 catches, I think makes a lot of sense, and I do think he's going to get the opportunities to get to 3 catches, or the over on 2.5. But with his receiving prop being just 29.5 yards, he could get that in one play. And as we talked about with Brandon Cooks, I love guys who can just knock it out in one play. I think that makes a lot of sense. Same thing with Dan Arnold. He can have a 1 catch for 23 yards, and he's hit his receiving prop, but he'd be under on the reception totals. So I'm going to take a look there and run with the Dan Arnold totals. Now, Anthony Miller's a different story because I do think he's going to have a low ADOT, and I think he's going to get a lot of easily convertible receptions in the same way Rondale Moore and Laviska Shenault get a lot of convertible targets for their teams. I do think Anthony Miller has a shot at this over 2. I actually think it makes a lot more sense than the 23.5 yards because 2 is such a small number for a guy like Miller for where he's going to play and, again, the easily convertible target. So I'm actually going to change Miller to the receptions total and go with the over 2.0. I'm not really big into pass TDs or any of these other types of props over here, though those are options for pass TDs, rush TDs, receiving TDs, pass completions, interceptions. But I'm going to go back to that original passing, and because I don't have 5 players, you don't have to have 5 players. You can make a team with just 2 players. I like to run 5 players. That way 3 out of 5 gets me some of my money back. I double my money with 4 out of 5, and I 10x my money with 5 out of 5. So and if I can tell the story of the way I think this game is going to play out, I do think Davis Mills, just through volume alone, is going to get over 205 passing yards. It's just no one else. No one else is coming in to play quarterback. Even if Mills sucks, he's going to get the volume. Even if he has to throw 40 times, he could get there. So I'm going to take the over. I prefer overs to unders. I'm not a big fan of unders, though we will talk about some unders potentially for the week-long play. So I'm going to throw that in there. I'll throw a $5 team in there. And so the team that I'm rolling out for today's game, Brandon Cooks over 68.5 yards, Terrace Marshall over 29.5 yards, Dan Arnold over 21.5 yards, Anthony Miller over 2 receptions, and Davis Mills over 205.5 yards. We'll throw that entry out there, and then we'll go roll up a team for the rest of the week. I'll go a little bit quicker, obviously, through this one. We spent a lot of time on the Thursday game, and we'll talk Sunday morning during the live stream, myself and Gouda, some other plays that we're looking for, and definitely in our Slack chat for members only, $3.99 a week. Get you access to that as well as everything else that we do. BanksterDFS.com/subscribe. We'll throw a ton of plays out there this week that we like. We'll go a little further in depth about the plays that we're looking at for members. Baker Mayfield, 247.5 passing yards. Who's he going to throw the ball to? Jarvis Landry's hurt. Odell Beckham's coming off the injuries list, but he's probably a little banged up. Chicago has a pretty good secondary, and Cleveland has a great running game. I don't see how Baker's going to get to 250 or 247.5. This is one of the few places where I actually like the under. I may not stick with this if I'm just going to run a 5-person team out. I do like more than 5 props. I'll run multiple props this week, but for the purpose of this video, I may end up pulling Baker because this is it's close. But I do think the under is in play for Baker Mayfield here. Another play that I'm looking at, let's see, was there another passing? Yeah, Ben Roethlisberger was another one that I do think the under is in play. He's a little bit noodle-armed right now. He's missing Deontay Johnson. Pittsburgh's going to want to establish the run to keep the defenders. Cincinnati actually is rushing the passer and putting a ton of pressure on the quarterbacks. 3 sacks in each of the first 2 games this year. I think in order to keep Ben Roethlisberger upright, they're going to want to run the ball a little bit more with Najee Harris, and I don't see the Steelers throwing the ball a ton. So I actually like Ben for the under against an improved Cincinnati defense. If Ben doesn't play that game, this pick gets pulled from your lineup, and you just run a 4-person lineup. So you don't have to worry about him, and you don't get an automatic win just because he doesn't play. Unfortunately, that's not how that works. There's no other passing props that stick out to me right now. Looking at rushing yards, Moving down on the rushing yards lists, who did I identify? Tyson Williams is a guy that I've identified because the Detroit Lions give up a ton of yards on the ground to their running backs, to opposing running backs. Tyson Williams might not need to get a ton of carries, but boy, will this be a fun game for him to get in there. Even if he gets 12 to 15 carries, 5 yards a carry is going to get him there on those 12 carries, 4 yards a carry on 15 carries, and against a Detroit defense that just got ran all over by the Green Bay Packers. I do like Tyson Williams, and the 49ers ran all over him week 1. I think Tyson Williams, this could be the game where he establishes himself. I do like the over on 59.5 rushing yards. I don't think that the Baltimore's going to have to run as much. This is not a game where Lamar Jackson should have to take over, and so they can feed their rookie and give him an opportunity. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 54.5. I don't know what they're doing with Edwards-Helaire. It's a low number, but I can't do it. James White, though, there's a number that really interests me. 15.5 rushing yards. James White has actually had 20% of the carries for the New England Patriots this year, and if they run against New Orleans, 20 carries. 20% of 20 carries is 4 carries. If he goes for even 4 yards a carry, which James White runs a lot of his carries out of the shotgun on passing downs, draws, and kind of surprise runs, that's 16 yards right there. 4 carries, 4 yards a carry, 16 yards. I think there's a sneaky a way that we can get to 16 rushing yards from James White in this game. It's a pretty low number, and again, much like we talked about with the receivers, you can get this number in one play. If, a 3rd and 18, White runs for 16 yards, doesn't get the first down because the defense is playing back, boom, you've hit your prop right there. But right next to James White is Daniel Jones at 25.5 rushing yards against an Atlanta defense that can't stop anybody. And Daniel Jones has at least 6 carries in each of the first 2 games this year. He's not afraid to run the ball, and he does have big playability on the read option. He does it quite often, actually. I do think he's going to want to run around a little bit in this game. It takes some of the pressure off of Saquon Barkley, who should be back to a somewhat normal workload. But if Daniel Jones can get the job done, I don't see why they wouldn't give him that opportunity to run around a little bit. So I like the over on 25.5 rushing yards for Daniel Jones. Mike Davis, I'm not going to go for the over here quite yet, not in this video at least, but I am leaning towards the over. I think the Cordero Patterson love is gone a little bit overboard. Mike Davis is still the clear lead running back. He has as many targets out of the backfield as Cordero Patterson does, and he's run a lot more than Cordero Patterson, and the Giants can't really stop anybody. So I do like Mike Davis for the over here. Just not ready to do it for this video. And that's it for the running backs, at least for the purposes of this video. Moving on to our receiving yards. We already talked about this game. Moving down the list a little bit. Darnell Mooney, I think, I'm not going to put him in this particular team right now, but he's getting a ton of targets. Justin Fields was looking for him down the field, just missed on a long play this past weekend. I think we're ready to see Darnell Mooney kind of establish himself as a real solid wide receiver too for the Bears and the big downfield threat. 50.5 is a kind of a big number. If Fields is inaccurate, that could be an issue. But again, Mooney can get that on one play, and I do think he's going to see some volume against the Cleveland secondary that has given up quite a few passing yards this year. They've been very vulnerable against the pass. And if Justin Fields can run around and pull defenders towards him as he's scrambling and kind of launch one to Mooney, the opportunity is there. I do like him quite a bit. I'm not going to put him on this card right here, but I do like Mooney over 50 if I was 50.5 if I was going to put him on my team. TJ Hawkinson going up against the Baltimore Ravens. You're like, the Ravens, the Lions, like the Ravens are way better than the Lions. Absolutely. But opposing teams have thrown against the Ravens to the tight end ridiculously. Now, those tight ends happen to have been Darren Waller and Travis Kelce, the 2 best tight ends in football. TJ Hawkinson's the 3rd best tight end in football. He's increased his target share this year. He's the clear top receiving option for the Detroit Lions. 58.5 is not a huge number for him. I think he's going to see double-digit targets in this game. I feel like Detroit's going to have to throw the football against Baltimore, and the middle of that Baltimore defense is where it's vulnerable, and Hawkinson's got the playmaking ability to get down the field and gets 20 yards a chunk if he has to. He can obviously do it underneath as well. I really like that 58.5 number for TJ Hawkinson. I'm going to throw him in the lineup for now. May not end up sticking with it if I find something I like better. But I do think TJ Hawkinson is someone that is just going to have a big game. It's going to have a big year. I love Hawkinson. The Indianapolis Colts, terrible against downfield receivers so far this year. A.J. Brown and Julio Jones should both have good games. I'm not sure which one's going to have the better game right now, so while I'm inclined to look at the over for both of them, I'm going to leave them both off the card for now, though I do like both of them this week given the matchup that they're in. anyone in the Kansas City Chargers game, the over looks enticing. I'm going to avoid them for here, but I do think that they make some sense. Damian Harris doesn't catch a ton of passes, so I do kind of think the under 7.5 receiving yards is interesting. Not going to put it on this card, but I mean, James White's going to be the guy who's going to get the targets, though I'm not going to take the over 33.5 receiving yards. We'll look at his receiving prop, actual receptions. Sterling Shepard's in a good spot. Mike Davis, though, we're going to go back to Mike Davis. You can't use him for both rushing and receiving. I might put him on separate cards, though. Mike Davis has had 13 targets in the first 2 games this year. That's more than Cordero Patterson. He has got a consistent 6 and 7 targets over the first 2 games. This is not new for Mike Davis. He got a ton of targets last year for Carolina. I do think that people are sleeping on Mike Davis. I love him in terms of a DFS play, a traditional DFS, but I do think in this format, at 21.5 receiving yards, if he's going to get another 6 or 7 targets, that's way within play. He will show up on one of my cards later on in the week. Pittsburgh, super leaky against slot receivers. T. Higgins is a little banged up. The Pittsburgh defense is way banged up. They gave up 13 targets to Cole Beasley and a combined 14 targets to Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow last week, both of whom played the slot a little bit for the Raiders. 60.5 receiving yards for Tyler Boyd seems low, given the fact that he'll probably see 8 to 10 targets. I want to see his reception prop before I go ahead and lock him into anything, but I will have a Tyler Boyd play. I'm just not sure if it's receptions or receiving yards. 61.5 is a big number for Rondale Moore. I do like him, but that's a surprisingly big number. I'm not sure I'm going to play that. Just popped in. Cooper Kupp, 77.5 against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay has given up 300-yard passing in back-to-back games this year. Cooper Kupp has been insanely good. I don't know why we wouldn't play Cooper Kupp at 77.5 receiving yards. It just makes no sense to me. I do think I'm going to put him on this card. We'll pull that Baker since I said that was a little bit iffy. I'm going to pull Baker. He'll be on a different card of mine, but I'm going to go with the over on Cooper Kupp. I just think 77.5 is way too low. If Antonio Brown doesn't play, Chris Godwin at 70.5 receiving yards makes a lot of sense. It makes sense even if Antonio Brown does play, if he is cleared from the COVID list, but 70.5 if without Antonio Brown makes a lot of sense on Godwin. Not going to put him on this card because I want to see what other plays are out there. We're going to just look at the receptions, and then we'll lock in our 5-player team. And the one I'm looking to replace right now might be Hawkinson, even though I love Hawkinson. Maybe Daniel Jones, the rushing yards. I want to see if there's something that stands out even more to me. Now, by the way, you could have a Thursday player in this. You could actually have a player from another sport on your team. It doesn't have to be just for the one slate or one team. If the prop's available, you can put it on your card. I like to keep the sports kind of separate for now. One day I'm sure I'll mix and match them, but you don't have to just stick to what I'm doing the way that I do this. In terms of targets, Marquis Brown, maybe not this week, but if his reception total continues to stay in that 4.5 range, I think he's a lock and load most weeks, especially in weeks that Baltimore's going to have to throw. He has become more of a possession guy. He still has the downfield ability, but he's become more of a possession guy, and the targets are there, the receptions are there. He's become a far more reliable option. He's not just boom or bust. 4.5 is too low of a number. I'm not going to put him on this team, but I do think there's an option to use Brown this week. I think it's a pretty decent play. I love Sterling Shepard this week. 5.5, those are a really good number, and good as in real hard to decide if you want over or under. I mean, he's going to be in that 5, 6, 7 catch range. He's got upside for 9 or 10, but you know, if he gets locked down a little bit and only gets 5 catches, 90 yards, and a touchdown's a great week, but you lose this bet, I'm not going to take that chance on there. Mike Davis on the 4 receptions, I'd rather take the receiving yards for Mike Davis. That's 21.5 to me is a more reasonable number than the 4.5 receptions. I think he can get there, but I'd rather take the shot with the receiving yards. 21.5 makes a lot more sense. Marvin Jones should see a ton of targets, 5 receptions. He's had 20 targets over 2 games. 5 receptions is, again, right on that border. I think, Jacksonville's going to have to throw. It's going to be a lot of volume, and if Lawrence throws 45, 50 times, 5 receptions is going to be too low for Jones. May end up on a card later this week. Not willing to put him on the card right this second. Cooper Kupp, I'd much rather do the yards than the reception total. 5 catches, 90 yards, again, is, I'd rather take the 90 yards. And that's where I'm at. You could also look at fantasy points, which we'll do over on our members-only Slack chat. I'm not going to spend the rest of the day, it's already a long video, looking at fantasy points. But if you think, maybe Justin Fields gets a ton of yards and runs around a lot. I mean, he's got 5 or 6 point rushing floor just from running around. Then he a touchdown and 200 yards passing to hit that number. So we can look at those as well in our Slack chat. But for now, to wrap this already long video up, we are going to roll with Ben Roethlisberger, under 260.5 yards. Tyson Williams, over 59.5 rushing yards. Daniel Jones, over 25.5 rushing yards. TJ Hawkinson, over 58.5 receiving yards. And Cooper Kupp, over 77.5 receiving yards. I'm going to throw that in for a $5 team. 10 times my money if I get all 5 right. 2 times the money if I get 4 right, and I get a little bit back. I get a couple bucks back if I do get 3 out of 5, which, keeps us playing, which is great. Throw that entry in there. And folks, you can get a 100% deposit bonus at Prize Picks DFS by entering the promo code Bankster, or you can go into the description box for this video, and there is a link that you can go to get your 100% deposit bonus up to $100 with your first deposit here with Prize Picks DFS. And do not forget, you can head over to banksterdfs.com. $3.99 a week gets you access to everything that we do, all sports, all content, no hidden fees. If you have any questions, hit me up on Twitter at Bankster17. We will see you at banksterdfs.com. My name has been and will continue to be Doug Shane. Thank you for spending the time with me today, and we will see you in the future. Have a great day.